for stopping by the Obviously Authentic channel. My name's Leah, that's spelled Lea and not Leah. And you are tapped into Oh Have Y'all Seen? Part 3 of Evil Genius Part 3. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my phone. I got like a bunch of notes. This part 3 was a lot. So I have my notes down here just to make sure I stay on track and I hit all the points I want to hit. But we're just going to be discussing this part. And I'm going to try to go in chronological order of how the episode went. If I don't, charge it to my head and not my heart, like the old people say. So we open up and Marjorie is meeting with her attorney. We actually got to see a lot more of Terry, who is the actual filmmaker of this actual documentary series. And we also got more information about like how their relationship came to be. So basically, Terry was really interested in the actual case and Marjorie. And he reached out to her. Marjorie reached out to him and they became basically pen pals. And she promised to give him information about the Brian Wells case, or how she knew about Bill Rothstein being connected to it, if he would get her a new attorney. So when the episode opens, or part 3 opens, we basically see Marjorie basically on a Zoom call. And she's speaking to the attorney. They're conversating about all this information and things like that. And you could tell throughout this whole entire episode, the attorney was over her. Like I think he was trying to be professional, but you could tell he was just like, this is a lot. But when we open up, Marjorie is basically saying that like she's a normal person. Just because she has bipolarism doesn't make her a criminal, which is true. Just because you're bipolar does not make you a criminal. But Marjorie, because you do criminal acts, make you a criminal. And you've done a lot of criminal acts, ma'am. And basically Marjorie was saying how she's a normal person and that she basically feels like she's being framed by Bill Rothstein and the government, because she said she had no connection to the bank robbery and Brian Wells murder. She actually in this scene admits that she killed James Roden. I don't know if I mentioned it in part 2, but she said that she did kill him at the end of part 2. Well, the attorney asked like, well, why did you kill him? And she was like, well, I did it in self-defense. He was always threatening to kill me, blah, blah, blah. And I think that also coincides with what Ken Barnes said when he was like, they would argue like cats and dogs, and then they would come back together and be all lovey-dovey like 10 minutes later. But she was saying she did it in self-defense. And as we know, Marjorie killed her last boyfriend in self-defense and got away with it. So no one really knows if her last boyfriend was actually like being abusive to her or putting his hands on her. But that's what they went with when they were on trial and she got off on it. So the episode continues and we see that Marjorie decided to write a letter to the state police, basically saying like, yo, if I give you information about these cases that I know, I need y'all to move me to a different location, which I don't think is like that bad. I mean, I was like, if you got a bargain to get better things, I mean, you're in prison. You can't do that much. So she basically said that Brian Wells was like, not Brian Wells, but Bill Rothstein was the mastermind of the entire bank robbery, and they just trying to frame her. And that's pretty much what she stuck to the entire episode of part 3. One thing I thought was crazy was that like Marjorie just constantly like belittles and yells at people. And it doesn't seem like anybody like checks her on it, because she was really rude to her attorney, like kept cutting him off. And then she was also rude to the FBI agents, and she seemed to be very rude to Terry as well. And I was just like, I don't know if I would want to deal with, like, it seems to be pretty consistent from part 1, 2, and this part 3 that Marjorie is just like a nasty person, or her personality is just nasty, because you kind of wondered like how much of that is due to her mental illness, but I think it's basically her personality, her attitude, because I keep messing up personality. Her attitude, I think, is due to her mental illness not being checked, or people not holding her accountable for the things that she has done, or the way she acts towards others. Because it's just like, she is really rude. Like, hella rude. So, we continue, and basically Marjorie gives Terry a little information. Just a little information. And she basically tells Terry that, like, I don't know why I keep getting Brian Wells and Bill Rothstein's name mixed up. But basically that Bill Rothstein had a blue van that when the whole bank robbery thing happened, he got the blue van towed away. And then once he got cleared of, like, the charges, he brung the blue van back. So then you start to be like, girl, like, what's up with the blue van, ma'am? What's up with the blue van? So Marjorie is like, so then remember in part 2, we see that Kenneth Barnes is going to be in this. We see in part 2, when Terry tried to go up to Bill Rothstein and have an interview at his house, just to interview him about, like, his connection and everything, you notice on the side there was, like, a blue van. Well, Terry showed Officer Lamont Hill, which we met in part 1 and part 2, who was one of the leading officers, that, like, he remembers seeing the van when they went to the last part of the scavenger hunt to to see, like, who, if someone was going to be there. They saw a blue van, but they were so far away from the blue van that the blue van was able to get away. Well, after seeing this video, Officer Lamont was like, that's the van. Like, that's the van. So once they realized that, like Bill was connected, they decided, like, the FBI agents decided to basically start anew with the case and scan over, like, all the information and videos and things of that nature to see if they could find a connection with Bill. And they actually did, which I thought was, like, wild. And it also is a testament to people who do investigations like this, because I don't think, like, someone with who isn't trained to be that so fine detail when sifting through, like, videos would have noticed this. But one of the FBI agents, Jerry, saw, like, when they were doing a scan of Bill Rothstein's home after they, like, this was after the freezer thing and everything. They see a diagram, and Jerry notices, or the FBI, I'll call him FBI agent, notices that there was, like, an arrow there, and the arrow curved a weird way. And the FBI agent, Mr. Jerry, was like, where have I seen that? Well, they went back and combed over the evidence of the actual bomb wreckage, and they noticed the arrows on one of the pieces of the bomb. So I was like, yo, excuse me, y'all. I was like, oh my gosh, like, Bill really was a part of this. Like, I thought he was already a part of it, but, like, once they had that piece of evidence, I was like, wow, like, you really was out here. Like, you really made the bomb. Like, we ended up finding out, like, at the end that Bill really did make the bomb. That bomb collar, which is horrible. And Marjorie even was like, I stopped. Like, she said that was the reason why she stopped being around Bill, was because Bill used to gloat about making bombs, which I was like, girl. Okay, Marjorie. He gloating about making bombs. Okay. But I did feel bad because, like, we end up seeing, like, his friend who's been in both, like, who's been in part 2. And it was sad because his friend was like, Terry is doing his, like, interview with his friend, and he gives him a piece of paper, or, like, not a piece of paper. He shows him on the computer, like, evidence of, like, the ransom letter, and then, like, a note from Bill Rothstein that they got from his home, and the handwriting, like, matches up to a T. And you can see the wind getting knocked out of his friend. And his friend was like, you know, in the back of your mind, you always want to believe that your friend is, like, innocent. But seeing this gives me definite proof that he wasn't. And it's just like, did I really know him? And I knew him for 40 years. And I felt so bad because I was like, imagine like being friends with someone for 40 years and then just coming to find out like they could do something so like outlandish and heinous as to putting a bomb around somebody's neck. Like, I was just like, wow. And I really felt bad for him because I was just thinking about like as the scene was playing, like, how would I feel if like one of my best friends were to like, I don't know, commit murder or rob someone or just do something just totally out of pocket, and I'm like over here defending you and saying like, oh, my friend would never do something like that, and then come to find out you did. Like, I would feel like I would feel stupid, but I also would feel like so confused because I would be like, my friend, like, to think that my friend was capable of doing something so egregious and wrong, like, I would be so upset. But we continue, and basically, now that they know Bill is like connected, they started to go through Marjorie's stuff because they felt like Marjorie was connected too. Well, Marjorie had her stuff in like a storage unit, but since she was now like being investigated for possibly being a part of the bank robbery, they go through her storage closet. Remember, y'all, she was a hoarder, so I know there had to be a lot of stuff to go through. And they found in like the last box, which I was like, I know they were probably like too outdone, that they went through all that lady's trash and finally found like a box of what they needed. And they found this letter where Marjorie wrote this like angry letter to PNC Bank. And remember, PNC Bank is the bank that Brian Wells robbed. And it was about like her dad, who she felt like illegally took money out of an account that was like designated for her after her mom died, and was like giving away her inheritance. And she just felt like the bank was rude to her, and she was over PNC Bank. Just over PNC Bank. So they were like, oh, okay, so sis was a part of this in some way. We just got to find the connection. I said, see? Why you keeping old letters? Why would you keep your hate mail, Marjorie? Just keeping your hate mail. So they started to interview Marjorie. Like, so she starts to build a rapport between the two FBI agents, Jerry, and I cannot remember the other guy's name. As they're doing interviews, the one thing they noticed, like, she always cussed or yelled at them until Jerry gave her a compliment. And I was like, girl. So, like I said, they started to scan over the information. They're picking up things. And one thing to note is that there is a clear rift between the FBI and the state police, because throughout this whole entire part 3, there was so many times the state police should have gave the FBI information in order for them to have a closed case. Like, that video, or them seeing the Brian Wells, that van in his parking, in his driveway or near his home, that should have ticked them off. They also found like letters from like inmates that were in jail with Marjorie, that were like this one lady, which I was like, she was a little too obsessed, but I guess she didn't like her. But we'll get to that because I got like a long diatribe of what I think about what she did. But we continue, and then Marjorie kept stating how like Bill had like a dark personality. Like, he had one persona that he presented, or his representative that he presented to everybody else, but she knew like the real crazy and sinister part of him. Which is probably true if you gonna make a bomb caller like you done watched Saw like 300 times. That's why I don't like Saw. Saw freaks me out. Stuff dealing with people having to do bodily harm to themselves to get freedom freaks me out. So it's 2000 and hold up, let me just make sure I hit that point. Okay, so now in the middle of the part, we get to 2005, where we have it was like one of those reality shows, and this guy who's I think his name is Geraldo Rivera, who's annoying. Geraldo Rivera basically had a show back in the early 2000s where it was like a true kind of like 60 Minutes and stuff like that. And I'll just say this young man, this older guy said when he was driving on the highway the day of the actual robbery, he noticed a lady in a gold car driving the opposite direction on the highway on like the emergency side. And he made eye contact with her, and he said, I will never forget those eyes because they were weird. And I was like, yo, Marjorie has a distinct face, because they even talked about a UPS driver as well, who when he was doing his route, he saw Marjorie and Bill Rothstein at the Shell that was like near the PNC Bank that was being robbed at the payphone. And he said she made eye contact with me, and it was a look that I'll never forget. And I think Marjorie doesn't understand that, like, lady, you have like a distinct face. Like, her face isn't ugly, but it's a face that you wouldn't forget. So you just deaf glaring at people will remember that. But basically, Marjorie was upset about the Geraldo Rivera show. She said that she told Terry she was going to sue the show and sue him because she felt like they were lying to her. And I also felt bad in a sense for the FBI agents, because Geraldo likes to drag people and troll them. And basically he was saying that the FBI agents weren't doing their job. And I'm like, well, you're a TV host. You're not an FBI agent. And one thing one of the FBI agents said, he was like, just because you think someone did it, and even if you feel like they did it or you know that they did it, if you don't have definitive proof to prove that they did it, then you don't have a case. And I was like, yeah, like, say that, period. Like, you can't accuse someone and not have proof unless you're black, because this is America. But I understood what the FBI agent was saying, because it's like, y'all get mad at them, but it's like he said, if we can assume all day that Marjorie did it and Marjorie was a part of it and she knows what's going on, but we don't have proof. So what are we going to do? So as they are like going on, like, we end up meeting like three, and this is the part, so I gotta look at my notes for this one, because this part, it kind of got a little confusing, but I rewatched it. Walks in the 3 to 4 inmates with female prisoners that were around Marjorie, and they said that Marjorie killed James Roden because he was gonna snitch about the pizza robbery, or the pizza bomb. I hate that they call it a pizza bomb. Situation. So basically what the ladies were saying was that Marjorie was telling them in prison that, like, they had to get rid of James because James was gonna snitch about his involvement, or knowing that Marjorie, Bill, Ken Barnes, and Floyd, which was Bill Rothstein's roommate, were involved with the whole Brian Wells death and robbing the PNC Bank. And one of the inmates even said that, like, Marjorie wanted everybody dead. She wanted the FBI agents dead. She wanted anybody that was investigating that robbery or like the murder in any way gone and out of her life. And then one thing I thought was crazy was that Marjorie implicates herself so much, because she made a comment saying, like, it's not like we didn't measure Brian Wells' neck. And she said that the two inmates that they had one of the inmates on the actual part 2 and part 3, and she said, when I heard that, I got up and I walked away because I didn't want to hear anymore. And then there was another young lady, and I forgot to write her name down, who was also wrote notes. So I feel like Marjorie does not understand that people don't like her. Because normally in prison, people don't be wanting to snitch on each other, because, like they say, snitches get stitches. So I really feel like Marjorie was like really either aggravating or really pissing people off, or like her demeanor just made people not like her. Because I think the lady's name was Kelsey. I can't remember, but she was an actual inmate that would write down word for word everything Marjorie would say while they would have prison conversations. I feel like that should let y'all know how much people didn't like her, for you to really sit down to like remember every conversation that someone had. And she even said in her notes, it was made in her notes, that Marjorie and Marjorie, Kim Barnes, Bill Rothstein were all connected to the Brian Wells case, but they never gave the FBI this lady's notes. It was in a folder called Prison Snitches, and it was in a drawer somewhere. And I was like, wow, like the state police really undermined. We're like, I won't say all of them, because there were some people in this actual documentary who are state police who were really trying to get the information out there. But I guess it was the higher ups really had issues with the FBI, because they undermined this case like severely. Because granted, the lady is a prison snitch, but it's Marjorie. It would be different if it was some like no name prisoner, but it's Marjorie, who you have connected to several other cases, and you have proof that she has killed someone before. Why not look at that? So Marjorie had a good way of like kind of getting herself out of things or saying things, because when they said that someone saw her on the road driving the opposite direction, she was like, I don't know why I was driving the opposite, why I was on the highway, but I wasn't going the opposite direction. Then when the UPS guy said, "Oh, I saw her at the payphone with Bill Rothstein," because he even said he noticed Bill Rothstein with coveralls on, because that's all that man wears. So I was like, for me, Bill is dumb, because if I were to commit a crime, I would not be wearing the same coveralls that I wear every day. Like, switch it up, put on some pants and some jeans or some basketball shorts, sir, if you're really trying to get away with something. And she basically was like, yeah, I was at the Shell, but Bill was trying to set me up for the murder, but I also was over there going shopping. And then they did an actual like map view of the area. It's a PNC Bank, an eyeglass store, and a McDonald's. You can't shop at McDonald's, and you damn sure can't shop at no eyewear store unless you getting glasses, and you don't wear glasses, ma'am. You could have came up with a better lie, Marjorie. Could have came up with a better lie. So they basically go and interview Floyd. Well, like I said, Floyd was Bill Rothstein's roommate. And the FBI agent basically was like, we could tell he knew something, but he didn't want to say too much. He didn't want to implicate himself. But the FBI agent was like, I've done a lot of interviews enough to know that someone has information. They just don't want to give it to me. So he's still sitting in jail. Hopefully he is. And then they end up going to get Ken Barnes, who you met in part two, who was like friends with Marjorie for 9 years and her fishing buddy, and was giving all this information about what's his name, about James Roden and like their relationship. So basically, Ken just started talking. I guess maybe he had a conscience, or he was just like, Marjorie ain't about to get me caught up, which I'm already caught up, because it looked like he was already in jail, but I couldn't tell. Like, he had on a gray top and a gray bottoms, and his hands were handcuffed, and I was like, well, maybe that's his prison suit, because the Marjorie had on a tan prison outfit, so I was like, well, maybe he's already in jail for something else. But the weird thing was, like, the police officer that interviewed him was like, he had a very like boisterous attitude. Kenneth Barnes calls himself Cocaine Ken. Why in the hell would you call yourself Cocaine Ken? If we not out here rapping, you definitely gonna implicate yourself as a drug dealer, sir. Really, Ken? Out here calling yourself Cocaine Ken? Gosh. But basically, Ken talks about this girl named Jessica Hoopsick, who we find out was a prostitute. And remember, in episode 1, Brian Wells had a book of prostitutes. So we end up finding out that Jessica Hoopsick was like one of his regular prostitutes that would kick it with Brian. And we also end up finding out how Kenneth Barnes knew Brian Wells. Was basically, Jessica was a prostitute and a drug addict, and Cocaine Ken would sell her drugs, And then Brian Wells would pick up Jessica off her beat on the street, go to Cocaine Ken's house, which is Ken Barnes, get drugs from him. They would shoot up, and then they would have sex on Ken's second floor in his 2-story home, and then they roll out. So like one of the FBI agents said, it was a one-stop shot. Like Ken would get they would pay Ken for the drug money. Then Brian Wells would pay Jessica for having sex, and then they would be done and over with. Well, they got to Jessica, but Jessica was like, she ain't know nothing about it. But Jessica knows something. She ain't gonna tell me she don't know something, but we'll probably figure out her connection to the story in part 4. So then, and then that's the thing. You could also tell that Marjorie and Kim were very similar. Even though Marjorie was at the end of this was calling Kim like a dummy and dense and not smart enough to do certain things, when they went to Ken's house was nasty. Ken's house was disgusting. And we end up finding out that Ken is a hoarder too. And it was sad because they had 2 dogs. One was Gizmo, the other one was Peanut. And the FBI agent said the house was so nasty that like the dogs were so bad in health that they had to put them down. I was like, dang. But we end up finding out that Marjorie, or like the main motive for doing all of this, was Marjorie wanted her daddy dead so she could obtain the full inheritance. And she needed $250,000, which is what she was trying to rob and what was on the ransom letter that was given to Brian Wells and what they were trying to rob from the PNC Bank to give to Cocaine Ken, aka Ken Barnes, in order to kill her dad. So basically, Marjorie did not like her father. She felt like her father was just giving away her inheritance, which she felt was like her birthright. And the dad was giving away the inheritance. He was giving money to the church, to his friends, buying cars for people. And Terry actually ended up meeting with Marjorie's father. And Marjorie's father was like, he saved upwards to $1 million, but he didn't want to give it to Marjorie because she kept getting in trouble with the law. And he knew that if he gave her the money, then she would just continue to get in trouble. So he felt like, why waste it by giving it to her? Let me give it to other people that really need it. And he even said he heard rumors that she wanted him dead. And basically he was like, Marjorie never knew what real love was. And then I'm like, well, that was y'all fault because y'all shouldn't have spoiled her. And y'all also should have taught her how to love herself and love others. So you can't totally put that on her. But then again, we didn't get a deep backstory and like how they really raised her. We just kept getting that Marjorie was smart, she was spoiled rotten, and that she was a good liar. That's what her dad kept saying. So closer to the end, because I'm wrapping this up here, Kenneth Barnes basically snitches on Marjorie and says that she was the mastermind. That Marjorie wanted her dad dead. They needed the money. I guess she was going to split the money with Bill Rothstein so he could pay off his siblings. And that they needed, they needed a decoy or a doughboy to go get the money from the actual bank. And that was Brian Wells. So we're coming to the end. The last part of Evil Genius, I will be back, will be part 4. And then I guess we will finally get the answers to all of this. We already knew Marjorie was the mastermind, but I guess finding out all this information is like really like interesting. And also noticing like how well she's not keeping up that well with her lies. Like she keeps saying that like she didn't do it, but then she keeps getting caught and her lies are not that well. They're like decent lies, but it's like, girl, you lying like you 4. Like for you to be so smart with 5 degrees, I would expect you to have a more intricate lie than like, yeah, I was at Shell, but I was going shopping when around the area you were at is only an eyeglass store, and a McDonald's. You can't shop at neither one. But okay. But that's it, y'all. That's all. Like I like to say, be bravely authentic because there's no point for you to be anybody else because you're amazing. Bye, y'all.